It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
Campaigns are theatre, and these 12 moments, they weren't part of the script, but they stole the show.
Love you too.
Good evening. The television and radio stations of the United States and their affiliated stations are proud to provide facilities for a discussion of issues in the current political campaign by the two major candidates for the presidency.
This was the moment politics entered the age of television. Nixon had experience, but Kennedy had presence. When people listened to the radio, Nixon seemed thoughtful, strong, but on TV, Kennedy looked calm, confident, and composed. Nixon, recovering from illness, appeared pale, sweating and tense on television. For the first time, it wasn't just about what you said. It's about what you looked like when you said it. This debate taught a generation of politicians that charisma on camera could outweigh experience on paper. Kennedy didn't just win that night. He redefined campaigning for television, let alone social media. This is one of my favorites. Reagan's 1980 campaign was defined by a single devastating question.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
It was short, sharp, and deeply emotional. He didn't even need to attack Jimmy Carter's character. He just made voters look around quietly and realize that inflation was high, jobs were scarce, and morale was low. The question wasn't a line, it was a mirror into the reality of America. And in it, Americans saw a country that had lost confidence. Reagan gave them permission to vote for change without guilt. He wasn't offering policy, he was offering optimism. And 4 years later, his election campaign doubled down on the narrative with the Morning in America ad. A calm, patriotic commercial showing American flags, weddings, and new jobs. It's morning in America again. With soft music and confident narration, it framed Reagan as a man with restored pride.
With interest rates at about half the record highs of 1980, nearly 2,000 families today will buy new homes. More than at any time in the past 4 years. This afternoon, 6,500 young men and women will be married. And with inflation at less than half of what it was just 4 years ago, they can look forward with confidence to the future.
This worked because Reagan didn't sell fear, he sold relief and hope. And talking about hope, the UK had just come through 18 years of Conservative government. The public was ready for change, but not chaos. Enter Tony Blair. He's young, he's articulate, he's polished. His campaign didn't just promise better governance, it promised cultural renewal. The slogan, "Things can only get better," wasn't just branding, it was therapy for the nation. Labour rebranded itself as New Labour, modern, economically sensible, and socially compassionate. Blair embraced the media, posed with Britpop stars, and stayed ruthlessly on message. This worked because it didn't feel like a revolution. It felt like a reset. From this, Blair didn't just win an election, he won a generation.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Barack Obama's campaign was a case study in narrative, identity, and hope. The phrase "yes we can" came after a narrow defeat in New Hampshire. But in his concession speech, Obama flipped the loss into a moment of unity. What began as a line turned into a mantra, then a movement. It spread online, people made remixes, celebrities sang it. It became a cultural phenomenon. I remember it vividly when I was 14 years old. His campaign was the first to truly harness the power of social media, and he used grassroots fundraising to his advantage. His team didn't just run ads, they built a community around this phrase. His campaign worked because Obama wasn't just running for something, he was inviting the country to run with him. In a country as vast and diverse as India, reaching every voter physically is nearly impossible. But in 2014, Narendra Modi's team came up with something revolutionary. 3D hologram rallies. In hundreds of towns across the country and villages, crowds gathered to see Modi appear live, in full 3D projection, giving a speech from hundreds of miles away. It wasn't just a gimmick, it created the illusion of omnipresence. A tech-savvy, modern leader who could be everywhere at once. Combined with a fierce anti-corruption narrative and promises of development, the campaign reshaped Modi's image from a regional strongman to a national visionary. This worked for Modi because it blurred the lines between presence and performance. In the world's largest democracy, optics matter. Modi didn't just show up, he showed what the future holds for India. The Brexit referendum was neck and neck. Emotions were high. Then came a poster that showed a queue of non-white migrants under the heading "Breaking Point." Now, critics called it racist, but supporters called it honest. Either way, it was everywhere. This poster crystallized the Leave campaign's emotional core. Sovereignty and control immigration all were going to be overwhelmed. In a single image, it made abstract concerns visceral. It wasn't subtle because it didn't need to be. It worked because, especially in a yes-no referendum, emotions beat logic. And Farage didn't appeal to minds. He triggered a voter base's gut instinct. During a fundraiser, Hillary Clinton said,
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
She meant racist, sexist, and homophobic. It was a policy critique, but it sounded personal, it sounded elitist, and it alienated half the country. Trump's base embraced the insult. They were even wearing badges of "I am deplorable." Clinton's team backtracked, but the damage was done. In one sentence, she confirmed every suspicion that she looked down on ordinary Americans.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
I can't believe it, but this happened in 2024 again, with Biden calling Trump supporters garbage. Trump used this to his advantage and literally campaigned in a garbage truck. This matters because politics isn't just about who you're fighting personally. It's about how language can be manipulated and used against you.
Take a look at what happened.
Midway through his 2024 campaign, Donald Trump was shot at close range. He survived, but everything changed. If you remember, the media narrative shifted from chaos agent to survivor, from a polarizing figure to a wounded warrior. I remember the majority of political pundits called the election at that point. Days later, Trump returned to the stage with his fist raised, bandaged ear, and surrounded by flags. It became a visual story of America's resilience. For his supporter, it felt biblical. For undecided voters, it invoked sympathy. It was one of the most dramatic moments in modern campaign history. This worked because politics is all about survival. Trump didn't just endure an attack. He embodied defiance against the establishment.
I am a fighter and not a quitter.
I am resigning.
She promised bold leadership, but what she delivered was fiscal panic. In September 2022, Prime Minister Liz Truss and her Chancellor unveiled sweeping tax cuts with no plan to pay for them. Markets panicked, the pound tanked, and within 44 days she was gone. Truss had wanted to channel Thatcher, but what she was a disaster. There's so much more to say on this, but why it matters for this video is it defined the 2024 general election 2 years later. Now, Rishi Sunak could have done better in the 6-week campaign, but this Liz Truss moment meant the Conservatives didn't just lose the policy argument, they were wounded in their economic credibility.
As at 7 p.m. tonight, we believe that 40 people have lost their lives in this act of extreme violence.
This was horrific in 2019. After a mass shooting at 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern showed up not just with sound bites, but with solidarity. Wearing a hijab, she embraced victims, comforted communities, and banned military-style weapons within weeks. Her image, head covered, eyes full of sorrow, went viral across the world. But it wasn't performative, it was sincere, and that made it powerful. This mattered because sometimes politics isn't just about showing your power. It's not about the strongman image. It's about showing presence. Ardern's empathy became a defining factor of her leadership. He'd been jailed, barred from running, branded corrupt. But Lula didn't just return, he won. His 2022 campaign framed him as the people's president, wrongfully persecuted by the elites. The imagery was pure redemption, weathered, humble, and reborn. He ran on food, fairness, and dignity. This worked for Lula because every great campaign needs a narrative, and Lula's wasn't just about ideas, it was about vindication. In 2005, the Conservative Party was choosing its next leader. David Cameron was barely known. The frontrunner was David Davis, but then came the speech. At the party conference, Cameron delivered an address with no lectern, no notes, and no teleprompter. Just him, calm, controlled, and conversational. He didn't lecture, he connected with the audience. He painted a picture of modern, compassionate conservatism that would challenge Labour directly. And in a party desperate to find someone that could take on Tony Blair, it landed perfectly. And if you remember, one line stood out. If we go for it, if we seize it, if we fight for it with every ounce of passion, vigour and energy from now until the next election, nothing and no one can stop us. After that speech, everything changed. Polling amongst Conservative members completely flipped. Suddenly, David Cameron was no longer the outsider. He was the frontrunner. This mattered because one unscripted performance changed the trajectory of a political career and gave the Conservatives, after years of being out of office, a leader who looked like he could win. Ironically, most people don't even remember what he said, only that he said it without notes. These weren't just moments, they were pivots. Campaigns are stories, and these were the plot twists that made history. One image, one sentence, one decision can change everything. The question is, what's the next moment that will rewrite the rules? If you enjoyed this video, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button. I run a channel to share ideas that build nations and help people live better lives. So I hope to see you in the next one.